Hi, welcome to week 2. This week we're going to be talking about negligence, and that's obviously a huge part of learning the law and understanding what that means. If you're negligent or somebody is negligent in your facility or wherever you work, there's a lot of laws centered around negligence. So you will be taking a quiz this week, you have a reading assignment, your lecture, and then you're going to be doing 3 case studies and answering questions or looking over those case studies. There's 3 very different case studies, so hopefully you can find maybe something that you can relate to within those 3 of a field that you're going into. I remember particularly in my business, something that stuck out to me as negligence is one of the things that I tell fitness instructors, because I certify fitness instructors all over the United States for fitness ministry. And so I have my own, our company has our own national certifications. So with that being said, we do go over some types of negligence and laws and legalities of group fitness. Well, I remember one particular case that somebody in a step aerobic class twisted their ankle and injured their ankle. So she went up obviously to the instructor and said, I've hurt my ankle, what do I do? And the instructor simply said, go home and stick it in a bucket of ice. Well, okay, most of us know, especially being in this field, that you would only stick your foot or your injured appendage or whatever in ice for 20 minutes, maybe more, a little bit more, depending on what the doctor recommends. But usually it's 20 minutes on, 20 minutes off, or 20 minutes every hour, something like that. And this particular participant went home and stuck her foot in a bucket of ice. I imagine for hours, because she ended up having to go to the emergency room and she had extreme frostbite, and I think there was even some of her toes had to be removed. I mean, it was like the craziest scenario ever. I mean, she lost a lot of feeling in that foot and ended up doing damage, and it was definitely negligent on the part of the fitness instructor. One thing that you cannot do is act like you're a doctor. First of all, you have to say, I am not a doctor, you need to see your physician. That's the first thing you say when somebody comes up to you and is injured, depending on what field you're going into. But if you're a fitness instructor, a personal trainer, you would say you need to see a doctor. And you would always document then what happened as well. But the only thing you're allowed to do is tell them RICE, R-I-C-E, rest, ice, compression, and elevation. And you can tell them how many minutes, and then you can also tell them to take NSAIDs. And that's the only thing you're allowed to do. But you need to be very specific about how you tell them, and you need to understand how long for them to put their whatever injured into a bucket of ice, because some people just don't have that common sense. And obviously she ended up getting sued, and it was not a good thing at all. So that's the one thing that sticks out to me. It's just important, little things like that I think she probably wasn't even thinking, just stick it in a bucket of ice or whatever, thinking that woman had common sense to not stick it in for hours. But they're not trained, and some people don't understand or know how to treat injuries, and we just take that for granted. So make sure you're very specific if you do give the RICE out and NSAIDs, and if you're not a doctor or an EMT or something in the medical field where you have a license to be able to prescribe something beyond that, don't do it. All right, there's my 2 cents for today. I wanted to leave you with a devotional. I actually ran across this devotional yesterday, and it really kind of stuck out to me. I've been a Christian as long as I can remember, because my dad was a preacher. Yep, I was a PK kid. And I remember reading this story a million times, but it just caught me a little bit differently yesterday. It was about when Jesus was at the Sea of Galilee, and he told his disciples to catch fish. It says, one day Jesus was standing by the lake of Sea of Galilee. The people were crowding around him and listening to the word of God. He saw at the water's edge 2 boats, left there by the fishermen who were washing their nets. He got into one of the boats, the one belonging to Simon, and asked him to put out a little from shore. Then he sat down and taught the people from the boat. When he had finished speaking, he said to Simon, put out into deep water and let down the nets for a catch. Simon answered, Master, we've worked all night and haven't caught anything, but because you say so, I will let down the nets. And so we all know how the story goes. When they had done so, they caught such a large number of fish that their nets began to break. So they signaled that their partners in other boats to come help them, and they came and filled both boats so full that it began to sink. And so obviously, a lot of you have heard that story before, but the commentator goes on to say he has studied a lot of Hebrew, and he says, after fishing all night, Peter and some of the disciples had caught nothing. How could these experienced fishermen catch absolutely nothing? I believe there's a clue found in the Hebrew word for fish. In Hebrew, the word fish shares the same root as dele, alpha, and gimel as the Hebrew term that denotes anxiety, worry, and fear. The disciples, especially Peter, were fishing from a place of worry, anxiety, and fear. Not only were they scared the authorities might do to them what they had done to Jesus, but they probably were concerned about their future. Though they had Jesus' inner circle of disciples, they had fled and hidden in his greatest hour of need. Only John had not left him. So surely they felt they had failed the Lord and had questioned their roles as leaders. When we fish from a place, everybody listen to this, this is what I want you to hear today. When we fish from a place of worry and fear, our nets will remain empty like the disciples' nets. We must follow and serve the Lord not by fear, but by faith. So there you go. Whatever your endeavors are, whatever your dreams are, whatever your goals are, try to fish from faith and not from fear. That's what I wanted to leave you with today. All right, have a blessed week. If you let me know, text me. I'll have a little bit of limited access because I'm going to be going out of the country on a research trip with my husband. So if for some reason you don't hear right back from me, that's why. But just know that you can still try to email and text me, and I'll try to get back with you. And if I don't get back with you, don't sweat it. We'll figure it out when I get back. So anyway, have a great, blessed week. Bye-bye.